Empires rise and fall. Do they follow a script? Empires seem eternal when they are at their peak. They dominate the world stage. Their economies are powerful. Their cultures spread across the globe. From the vantage point of their capitals, it can feel as if their power is absolute and will last forever. History, however, tells a different story. It teaches us a humbling lesson. Every great empire, from ancient Rome to the more recent British and Spanish giants, eventually faces a decline. They all fall. This is a fact of history that we have seen repeat itself time and time again. The question is not if empires fall, but how. Is there a hidden pattern, a predictable sequence of events that leads from the height of power to the depths of collapse? Many historians believe there is. They argue that the fall of an empire is not a random event. It is not simply a case of bad luck or a single catastrophic defeat. Instead, it is a process, a slow, grinding decay that follows a recognizable script. This script unfolds over decades, sometimes even centuries, a sequence of internal weaknesses and external pressures that build upon one another. Each step makes the next one more likely, like a staircase leading downward. Once an empire sets foot on the top step, the journey to the bottom becomes almost inevitable unless something drastic changes its course. This is what we call the pattern proof of imperial collapse. In this exploration, we will look at this very pattern. We will examine a 7-step framework that seems to map the decline of many of the world's greatest empires. We will look at the Romans. We will study the Ottoman Empire. We will also analyze the Spanish Empire. By understanding how these historical giants crumbled, we can gain a new perspective. We can see the warning signs. The goal is not to predict the future with certainty. History is not a crystal ball, but it does offer a powerful mirror. By studying the fall of Rome, the Ottomans, and Spain, we are not just looking at the past. We are looking for reflections of our present. Does the United States, the dominant global power of our time, show any of the same symptoms? Is it walking a similar path? This comparison is crucial. It helps us move beyond the daily headlines and political debates. It allows us to take a long-term view of the health and stability of the American Republic and its place in the world today. A roadmap to ruin, the 7 steps to collapse. So what is this roadmap to ruin? We have broken it down into 7 distinct steps. Think of them as stages in a long illness. Step 1 is political fragmentation and elite capture. Political division becomes so deep that compromise becomes impossible. Step 2, economic strain. The government starts spending far more than it takes in on a bloated military and on a complex bureaucracy, leading to massive debt. Step 3, military overreach. Forces stretched too thin across the globe, fighting too many wars, draining the treasury. Step 4, civil unrest. Society begins to fracture. People lose trust in their institutions. People lose trust in each other. Protests become common. Riots erupt. A general sense of anger spreads. Step 5, loss of civic virtue and confidence. Shared values and sense of duty begin to erode. People become cynical and disengaged. They no longer believe in the greatness of their nation. Step 6, external pressures. As the empire weakens, rival powers press their advantage economically, militarily, and diplomatically. Step 7, state failure and loss of territory. The central government can no longer control its borders or maintain order. It loses legitimacy. Regions may break away. The empire shrinks until it's a shadow of its former self or disappears entirely. This 7-step pattern provides a clear and powerful lens through which to view history. It helps us organize the complex story of imperial decline into a sequence we can analyze. Throughout this analysis, we will apply the 7-step framework to each empire. First, the Roman Empire. Next, the Ottoman Empire, followed by Spain. For each empire, we'll pinpoint events that match each step. And finally, we turn the lens on the United States in 2026. The first step on the path to collapse is often the quietest. It sets the stage for everything that follows. This is political fragmentation and elite capture. This begins when the political system of an empire starts to break down. Healthy political debate turns into bitter tribal warfare. Compromise becomes a dirty word. Political parties or factions stop seeing each other as opponents in a shared project. Instead, they view them as enemies to be defeated at all costs. The government becomes paralyzed. It can no longer solve the big problems facing the nation. Its leaders are too busy fighting each other for power and influence. This gridlock creates a vacuum that is quickly filled by self-interest. This is where elite capture comes in. The elites are the wealthiest and most powerful people in the empire. They are the ones with connections, money, influence. As the political system fractures, these elites see an opportunity. They begin to use their resources to bend the rules of the system in their favor. They capture the levers of power. Laws are written to benefit their businesses. Tax codes are changed to protect their fortunes. They become a class apart, living in a bubble of extreme wealth, disconnected from the struggles of ordinary people. The government no longer serves the public good. It serves the interests of a tiny, powerful few. This process creates a deep sense of injustice. The average citizen begins to feel that the game is rigged. Trust in government plummets. People start to believe their leaders are corrupt and self-serving. This feeling of alienation is dangerous. It erodes the very foundation of a stable society. When people no longer believe their government represents them, they are less likely to follow its laws, pay their taxes, or participate in civic life. The social contract begins to tear apart at the seams. Identifying this first step is crucial. It is the initial crack in the empire's foundation. It is a warning sign that the structures holding the empire together are starting to weaken from the inside out, making it vulnerable to the shocks that will follow. The Roman Empire is the classic case study for imperial collapse. Its story has captivated historians, leaders, and citizens, serving as a powerful and enduring warning. For nearly 1,000 years, Rome grew from a small city-state into a sprawling empire, dominating the Mediterranean world and much of Europe. Its legions were unstoppable, its engineering was legendary, and its laws formed the bedrock of Western civilization. From the perspective of a Roman citizen in the 1st century AD, and it would have been impossible to imagine a world without the empire's power and influence. Its permanence seemed assured, a fact of life as certain as the rising sun. Yet, as we know, Rome did fall. The story of its decline is not one of a single sudden event, but a long, complex process that unfolded over generations. Historians often point to the crisis of the 3rd century as a major turning point, a time when the cracks in the imperial foundation became gaping fissures. From that point on, despite periods of recovery and reform under strong emperors like Diocletian and Constantine, the downward trajectory was set. It is this slow, grinding process that makes Rome the perfect template for our 7-step pattern. By applying our 7-step framework to Rome, we can see how internal weaknesses compounded over time, making the empire increasingly vulnerable. The first step, political fragmentation and elite capture, is vividly illustrated in late Roman history. The political system became deeply unstable, especially during the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, from 235 to 284 AD, Rome had over 20 different emperors. Alongside the chaos, the Roman elite grew detached and self-serving. The senatorial class became a super wealthy aristocracy focused on estates and luxury over public service. They used influence to avoid paying taxes, shifting the burden onto small farmers and city dwellers. The political decay was matched by step 2, economic strain. Running the Roman Empire was astronomically expensive, and the primary cost was the military. To meet these costs, emperors resorted to desperate measures. They repeatedly raised taxes and began to devalue its currency. This economic crisis directly fueled step 3, military overreach. The Roman army was stretched dangerously thin across a frontier that spanned thousands of miles. This forced emperors to rely increasingly on non-Roman barbarian mercenaries to defend the borders. Their loyalty was often to their paymaster, not to the idea of Rome. Our second case study is the Ottoman Empire, a vast and long-lasting power that, like Rome, once seemed destined to last forever. Founded around 1300, it grew into a globe-spanning empire. At its height under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century, it commanded immense wealth, military power, and cultural achievement, yet the seeds of decline were sown at its peak. Historians call the decline long, slow, and complex. Serious challenges began in the late 17th century after failing to capture Vienna in 1683. It became known as the sick man of Europe. The first steps of decline were centered on political fragmentation. Later, sultans became increasingly isolated in their palaces. A key element of this elite capture was the Janissary Corps. Once the elite shock troops, the Janissaries evolved into a powerful political force, a state within a state. This political decay was accompanied by economic strain. The age of rapid expansion ended. New global trade routes bypassed Ottoman lands. To cope, the Ottoman government resorted to taking on massive foreign loans from European banks. By the late 19th century, the empire was effectively bankrupt. This was a profound national humiliation. The empire had lost its economic sovereignty. The military fell behind technologically. Nationalism strained the empire. Entering World War I with the Central Powers sealed its fate. Defeated and dismembered by the Allies, the Ottoman Empire was dissolved in 1922, a textbook collapse. Our third case study, the Spanish Empire. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Spain was the world's first truly global superpower. Following the voyages of Columbus, Spain built a vast colonial empire. Immense quantities of silver and gold flowed from the New World into the Spanish treasury. This was the empire on which the sun never set. But even as the treasure fleets arrived in Seville, the foundations of Spanish power were already eroding. Its decline was long and painful. The political structure, an absolute monarchy, became rigid and unable to adapt. A powerful aristocracy resisted economic and social reforms. The massive influx of silver from the Americas created what economists now call Dutch disease. It caused massive inflation. As a result, Spain's domestic industry withered. The vast American wealth was squandered on costly European wars, military overreach. This ideological mission led them to become entangled in an endless series of costly wars. These constant conflicts drained the treasury far faster than the American silver mines could replenish it. As the empire weakened, the internal social fabric began to tear. Civil unrest took the form of repeated regional revolts. All the while, external competitors, the British, French, and Dutch, grew stronger. By the time Napoleon invaded Spain in 1808, the empire was a hollow shell, unable to prevent its American colonies from breaking away, the final step in its long fall from grace. We have journeyed through the fall of three of history's greatest empires. Despite their vast differences, all followed a strikingly similar path to decline. Now we arrive at the most difficult and uncomfortable part of our analysis. We must turn the lens away from the distant past and focus it directly on the present day. We must look at the world's current dominant power, the United States of America. The United States has been the world's leading economic, military, and cultural force for generations. Its power seems immense, its position secure, but as we have learned, this is exactly how citizens of Rome, Istanbul, and Madrid felt at the height of their own empires. In the following sections, we will apply the same 7-step framework to the United States. We will examine each step one by one and look for evidence of similar trends in American society today. We will look at the state of its politics, the health of its economy, the role of its military, and the mood of its people. The purpose of this exercise is to hold up a mirror. The stories of past empires provide a reflection, allowing us to see our own situation with greater clarity. Is the United States on the same downward staircase? Are the symptoms of decline we saw in Rome, the Ottomans, and Spain present in America today? The first step in our pattern is political fragmentation and elite capture. The evidence of extreme political fragmentation is all around us. American politics has become deeply polarized. Democrats view Republicans as existential threats. Republicans view Democrats as socialists and communists. The space for compromise and bipartisan cooperation has shrunk dramatically. This intense division has led to political gridlock. The U.S. Congress is often paralyzed, unable to pass major legislation or even fund the government without brinksmanship and shutdown threats. At the same time, we see clear signs of elite capture. Academic research indicates wealthy and corporate preferences shape policy. Campaign finance and lobbying give the wealthy an outsized voice in Washington. That creates a widespread perception the system is rigged, and many Americans on the left feel government no longer works for them. Many Americans on the right feel the same. They see a ruling class in Washington, on Wall Street, and in Silicon Valley. We see it in bailouts for large corporations while small businesses struggle. We see it when politicians leave office and take high-paying lobbying jobs. This is the modern face of elite capture. Economic power translating into political power creates a feedback loop, concentrating wealth and influence at the top, just as we saw in Rome, the Ottoman Empire, and Spain. The second and third steps, economic strain and military overreach, are deeply intertwined. For decades, the United States has run massive fiscal deficits. A primary driver of this spending is the enormous U.S. military budget. It is larger than the next 10 countries' military budgets combined. This spending supports a global military presence that is unprecedented in history. The United States maintains approximately 750 military bases in more than 80 countries around the world. This vast network is incredibly expensive to maintain. This spending has contributed to a national debt that has soared to more than $38 trillion. The government now spends over $1 trillion each year just to pay the interest on this debt. That is money that cannot be used to invest in infrastructure, education, scientific research, or other domestic priorities. This financial strain is happening alongside a classic case of military overreach. Since the end of the Cold War, the U.S. military has been engaged in a state of near perpetual conflict. These conflicts have cost trillions of dollars and, more importantly, have taken a heavy toll in human lives, both American lives and foreign lives. This constant state of warfare has put immense stress on the American armed forces. A powerful military-industrial complex has a vested interest in maintaining high levels of military spending, regardless of the strategic need. The United States, like the empires before it, has taken on the role of global policeman, a position that is both financially and physically exhausting. The political and economic strains are tearing at the very fabric of American society, leading directly to our fourth step, civil unrest and loss of social cohesion. The United States feels more divided today than at any time since the Vietnam War. These divisions are not just political. They're geographic, cultural, racial. Trust in major institutions has plummeted. This loss of social cohesion has manifested in rising civil unrest. In recent years, American cities have been rocked by protests and riots, most notably the George Floyd riots in Minneapolis, and more recently, after Renee Good was shot when she tried to run the agent over with her car. Economic inequality acts as a powerful accelerant for this social decay. Deaths from drug overdoses have skyrocketed, often described as deaths of despair. Life expectancy in the United States has actually declined in recent years. This toxic environment is amplified by social media and a fractured media landscape where misinformation and conspiracy theories spread unchecked. People literally do not agree on basic facts anymore. When a society loses its ability to have a shared conversation based on a common set of facts, it loses its ability to solve problems. This is the unraveling of unity. Deep social division leads to step 5, loss of civic virtue and confidence. It's intangible but crucial. A crisis of faith in the American project itself. The great stories and ideals no longer resonate. The melting pot, the land of opportunity, the shining city on a hill. Many young people now find these ideals hollow. That internal weakness arrives as the U.S. faces step 6, external pressures. For the first time since the Soviet collapse, the U.S. faces a true peer competitor, China. The unipolar moment is over. The world is becoming multipolar. The U.S., weakened by internal division, heavy debt, and military overstretch, now faces a more competitive, dangerous world. This convergence, internal decay meeting external challenge, is exactly what history warns about. We then turn the historical mirror on the United States. The reflection is unsettling. The echoes of history are impossible to ignore. The parallels are stark. However, it is crucial to end on a note of caution and context, not of fatalism. History can point the way, but it doesn't lock us in. The United States possesses unique strengths that these past empires did not. It has a dynamic, innovative economy, a democratic system that allows for self-correction. The future is not yet written. Recognizing these dangerous patterns is the first and most critical step toward changing course. The ultimate question is one of will. Do the American people and their leaders have the wisdom to see these trends, the courage to make difficult choices, the unity to act for the common good? History provides the warning and the roadmap of what to avoid. The responsibility to forge a different path rests squarely on the shoulders of the present generation.